The Patterson Foundation
strengthens people, organizations, and communities by focusing on issues that address mutual aspirations,
foster wide participation, and encourage learning and sharing.
Welcome to Guided by Our Values, a Beyond the Blog podcast of the Patterson Foundation. Hello, I'm Debra Jacobs. I'm President and CEO of TPF, also known as the Patterson Foundation, and your host today as we explore a decade-plus long partnership with the Harwood Institute. It's going to be so exciting as we're talking with Rich Harwood. So the theme of this is about partnering and why do we have this partnership, but it's also woven into TPF's values. So I'm going to read our values. We believe meaningful change requires commitment and persistence, and we encourage this by embracing ideas that address a constantly changing world and undertaking philanthropic work in ways that others are not, cannot, and will not do. I'm as excited as can be to welcome Rich, so we're going to get right into our conversation. Rich is the president and founder of the Harwood Institute. He's been doing this work for decades. We only have 1 decade of the work he's been doing. Rich, welcome.
Good to be with you. It's great to be here.
And we are excited because you have done podcasts with us before, so we are going to continue to go deep but chart new territory.
I'm trying
together.
to see how many of these we can do over the next 10 years.
That's good. All right. Remember, persisting, lasting change is what we're interested in. So the Patterson Foundation's purpose statement says, we strengthen people, organizations, and communities in ways that foster wide participation around shared quality of life aspirations. Does it resonate at all with the Harwood Institute?
Yeah, it's very similar to our the way in which we describe our work. I think it's probably why we've had this relationship for so long. You know, I know something, Debra, that you talk a lot about is that organizations work well together when they share a common future, when they share common values, when they share a common purpose, when they believe, in this case, you're a funder, but actually money is actually not at the core of what my understanding and experience with the Patterson Foundation has been. And I think that's true of the Institute's work as well. You know, we're interested in how can we build the capabilities and capacities of people, communities, and the country to move forward in a way that actually we don't stay with them forever, that it's their capabilities, their capacities, their abilities to do things. And I think, well, I know that the Institute shares that belief with the Foundation.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a detour here because we live in interesting times now. And in fact, when I mentioned our values, living in a changing world, your work is definitely adaptable to the changing world, but your tenets and your practices, you've proven, you've demonstrated that it doesn't matter how the world changes, we still need to lean in as people and behave certain ways. So could you just talk about what you do so that those who may not be familiar with the Harwood Institute will get a glimpse?
Yeah, I mean, in short, we're interested in how do you bridge divides at a time, as you're suggesting, that we seem to be coming apart at the seams. How is it that we create a culture of shared responsibility when the notion of sharing things has become increasingly difficult and the notion of responsibility is almost taboo at times? And how do we ensure that community is a common enterprise? And so we expressly chose the word community because for me, community means all of us, not just some of us. And in America today, that's not always true. And so what changes, as you suggested, what changes is not our principles, not our practices. Those have been developed over 40 years. Our work has spread to all 50 states and 40 countries. But the context that we work in has fundamentally shifted and continues to shift. And I think it's one of the reasons why this practice that we teach people about turning outward, where community and people are always our reference point, always in our line of sight, always what we're in service of. That means we as an organization, the Institute itself, has to be incredibly turned outward all the time to ensure that we're aligned with, attuned to what's happening in communities, what's happening in the country, so that we can meet people where they are, we can meet communities where they are, we can meet organizations where they are, and we can enable people to unleash their own potential to move forward.
one phrase that we periodically use at the Patterson Foundation is building connective tissue to create new realities. And you kind of go, what the heck is that? It really is a lot about, at the core, relationships. And as I listen to you and I watch you in action, it's all people to people.
It's people to people. It's, one of the phrases we've been using probably in the last 5-10 years is that civic culture is at the core of so much of this. We can talk about program strategies and initiatives. They're all really critically important. They are. I don't mean to diminish them at all. But what I've found now in 40 years is that the biggest predictor of whether or not communities and society at large moves forward is the health of our civic culture. That is rooted in people. It is rooted in relationships. It's rooted in the networks that we need for shared learning and innovation that propels us all forward. It's rooted in whether or not organizations and the ways in which they operate in relationship to people and communities is really pivotal. It's related to how leaders relate to people and communities. It's related to our shared purpose, and a shared purpose is really nothing more than people coming together, understanding what matters to them, and articulating where they want to go together. So all of those aspects of civic culture are rooted, at the end of the day, in people, relationships, how we get things done together.
So, Rich, every community is distinctly different, okay? And whatever my community is, we are unique. But yet, as you travel the country, people are unique in their community, but we're also similar that you keep discovering. So Can you just enlighten us about, no, my community is unique?
Well, look, we're with the Patterson Foundation working in DeSoto County, very rural, very resilient, but has not fully embraced or is now just fully embracing the notion they can thrive. Alamance County, North Carolina, probably the most divisive place I've worked in 40 years, a different set of challenges. Reading, Pennsylvania declared the poorest community in America 10 years ago, a different set of challenges. But to your point, when you close your eyes and listen to folks, when you hear what really matters to them, when you hear what it is that they're yearning for in their lives and for their communities, it's all the same. We all want a sense of decency. We all want our dignity upheld. We all want a sense of shared responsibility that we're going to be supportive of one another. We all want, over the 40 years, I've now identified 10 issues that are at the core of the American experience that people are looking for. Those transcend every community I've ever worked in. And they're very basic to our daily lives. So we all want those things. We all want our lives as human beings rooted in not simply fixing what's wrong. Each of us and all of us are trying to create something in our lives. We're trying to move someplace. And I think we often forget that. We look at folks who are in poverty and we think that they just want things fixed. No, actually, we all want to create a better life. We're all trying to move someplace. And these are all, these all sound as obvious things. But in our society where we have become overly specialized, overly technical, overly mechanized, these things get crowded out and we lose sight of them. And I think, and this is what I love so much about the foundation, and I know we share, I think we've got to put people back at the center of what we're doing. After all, why are we doing this work?
You brought up DeSoto. So the Patterson Foundation's current work with the Harwood Institute is working in two very different communities. So as we focus in Charlotte, DeSoto, Sarasota, and Manatee County, DeSoto, you mentioned, is our rural community that we work in. But we're also undertaking the North River Initiative, which is, I'll say, totally different, but then it's not totally different. So could you just talk about the fun that you're having, and I do see, look at the smile, the joy that you're experiencing, bringing the practices into two very different communities, yet there's great things percolating. They're in different stages, I know.
Yeah, as I mentioned, DeSoto is what we would say in the waiting place, has been in the waiting place in our 5 stages of community life, kind of stuck, very rural, often looking back to try to reclaim something from their past. there's a narrative there that we can't do better. We will survive, but we can't do better. And so there the question is, and they have a history of not working together. So there the question is, how can we create together a greater sense of possibility and a new way of not just getting together, but working together, and a demonstration that change is actually possible, that is rooted in what matters to people, not imported from outside.
Okay,
So-
there's one concept I want to make sure I don't lose, because I might, is part of your technique practice is, rather than focusing on the problem, you bring in the what do we want?
Right.
Because we get stuck, because
We get
when
stuck.
we have a problem, we know the answer.
Yeah.
But when we have an aspiration, hope and possibility emerges.
Yeah,
Can
you know.
talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we engage communities at all, we insist on asking people, what are your problems? And, inevitably, we've all experienced this. You experience this in communities. You experience it in family life. People give a litany, a laundry list of all the things that are wrong. Then they want to know, why the hell haven't these been solved? Then they want to know who is responsible for solving them, mostly someone else. Then they start pointing fingers and casting aspersions. And before you know it, we're in this kind of toxic cul-de-sac that America now finds itself in today. It's a dead end. It's a dead end. Or we politicize everything, which is another thing that we see across America today. Everything becomes a political issue, and people immediately take up sides. I'm either on the red team or the blue team. That's a recipe for disaster and gridlock. Here's an alternative. What if we focus on people's aspirations, not utopian visions? I'm not interested in utopian visions.
And you're not interested in a visioning plan
No.
or a big
Waste of time.
strategic plan.
Waste of time, never goes anywhere. And what happens is we raise people's expectations. They get dashed. People's frustration sets in. That's where cynicism comes from. Instead, if we focus on people's shared aspirations, and for any of your listeners, you can just try this as I'm saying it. Think about your aspiration for your family, your community, your life. The aspiration always comes from your gut. It's something that matters deeply to you. It's also something that I've found is actionable, doable, and achievable. It's not some utopian thing far off in the distance. And when we engage in those conversations together, what people realize is, well, yeah, we don't agree on everything, but there are some core things we do agree on, and more to the point, there are things we agree on that we can actually get to work on now. We don't have to wait for anyone. And when we do that, those aspirations, those shared aspirations that we're articulating, actually implicate us. We are actors in this, which is good because American democracy is based on having citizens, that we are co-producers, that we are builders together, we are creators together. That in and of itself taps into people's potential and their innate capabilities to step forward and begin to take action. Then we're in business. That's what's happening now in DeSoto. They're moving forward in ways I was just there.
You were just there.
In ways that people there tell me they never could have imagined before. It is giving them such a sense of possibility. Have they turned the county around? No. Have they began to make strides forward in ways that matter to them and give them greater hope that they can keep moving with others? Absolutely. Now, if you compare that to North River,
Yeah.
which is up in Manatee County, very fast-growing area, right? So this is north of the river. It's a pretty big swath of territory, right? And very different places. There you have old communities like Rabonia or Palmetto, but you have really fast-growing places, gated communities, right? With people, sort of this huge influx of new residents, not happening in DeSoto. And so here the challenge is, how is it with this great influx, they can continue down the path they're on, which will take them to further fragmentation, and not addressing the concerns that people have there around youth, around a sense of connection, around ensuring that they manage their growth moving forward in smart ways. It's not that people are pro-growth or anti-growth for the most part. They want to manage it in smart ways to ensure that there are green spaces and places for people to gather. So there the question is, how do we build a sense of community at a time when this area is so fragmented and becoming increasingly fragmented? So it's a fundamentally different challenge. And how do you do it where many people expressly moved there to move behind gated communities. So this is a challenge of the fast-growing America that we're experiencing, very different than old Florida in DeSoto. They're almost bookends of the American experience today.
One of the tenets at the Patterson Foundation is don't arrive with the answer. Arrive with the question and educate and engage. So oftentimes people think you are the man who's showing up with all the answers of what people should do.
Yeah.
So how do you help people understand, no, I'm not the Wizard of Oz. You definitely don't want to be the Wizard of Oz, but talk about it's not you having the answer, but where does the answers come from?
Yeah, I think the Institute shares with the Patterson Foundation a deep and abiding belief in emergent change. And that change emerges from people getting together, discovering their shared aspirations, and figuring out how they can begin to take steps moving forward. The Patterson Foundation has been doing this for years, and now we're doing it in partnership for years. And one of the things I say when I start to engage with communities, I never say we're working in communities. For me, it's we're working with communities. I never say we're leading communities. We're actually walking beside folks. We're actually walking behind them over time. And so one of the things I say to folks up front very quickly is, I don't live here. This isn't my community. And one of the challenges, the other thing I say is, are you tired of consultants? I'm not a consultant, but consultants coming in and charging you a lot of money and importing things from some other place. It would be like the equivalent of importing something from North River into DeSoto, where they don't have any sense of the context of the community. They don't have any sense of what matters to people. They don't have any sense of what people are up against. They don't have any sense of the narrative of the community, which is a big determinant in how people engage and behave. Aren't you tired of that? Aren't you tired of these visioning exercises that come and go and leave you with very little but dashed hope? And everyone shakes their head like you are. And I say, well, good, because I don't believe in any of those things. And we're not going to do any of those things. And in fact, everything that happens here is going to be rooted in what matters to you. It doesn't matter what matters to me. It does not matter. What I can do is help you develop the mindset and practices.
It's the
so you can shape your own future.
And we are watching, particularly in DeSoto County, individuals who have participated in the labs and the workspaces, taking the principles and using them over here. It's not just when we're doing Harwood Day, but they're using them in life, family, wherever. All right, I am going to go to proven practices, because TPF really, we like to work locally, but we like proven practices. You are a prolific author. Over the years, you have written many books. You have been studied about what are your ideas working, are they not? And TPF, we have embraced the opportunity to engage people around book circles. We initially did Stepping Forward book circle. Now we're on the new Civic Path book circles. So we take our engaging with people and using the book as a tool to start building those conversations. So could you just reflect on why do you do a book and what do you think of book circles?
Well, why do I do a book? The easy answer to that is I feel compelled.
Okay.
I've found, for me personally, I can't, whether I'm writing articles or a book, I have to feel compelled to say something. I have to feel moved to say something. The new Civic Path I wrote while I was on a campaign crisscrossing the country at the time, and I would get up at 4:30 in the morning, and I would just start writing. It just came out. So I don't believe, writing is a torturous process, and it is for me too. But I don't believe you should write things unless you believe there's something to say. It's not about getting your name on the cover of a book. Who cares? So that's one part. The book circles, which I'd rather talk about, the Patterson Foundation was the first partner in the country that said to us, and really it was you who said to me one day, well, why don't we just do some book circles around Stepping Forward? And I was like, really? That's awesome.
What is that? What is that?
What is that?
Yeah.
And, I've been in book clubs and all that kind of stuff, but this was different. This was where from my perspective, the Patterson Foundation was opening spaces for people to decide they wanted to step into, and that the foundation provided books for people so people didn't have to buy them themselves, which as an author is always a great thing. But really, in terms of folks, it's great because it reduces a barrier that so many people have. And the foundation, with the Institute, created a discussion guide, and the foundation cultivated book circle facilitators. So because everyone's worst nightmare is joining a book circle or a book club or going to a group in church, and it goes off the rails. That's everyone's worst nightmare. And no one wants to waste their time doing that now. So those ingredients plus, the foundation incentivized people that if they step forward, the foundation would donate potentially to different things. And here's the thing I think that's even more important is that the foundation stuck with folks. So I remember coming down from multiple events where you convened everyone and we had a chance to talk more deeply, where people could plug into. I just met someone in DeSoto County yesterday who I'd never met before, who came in with the new civic path. It was all underlined.
Woo, we love this.
And she had been in a book circle. That's how she sort of came into this. And I was like, that's incredible. And we had a long conversation. Then she does social media, so she got me to do some videos with her. So, but it's the ripple effects that I'm really describing, right? It's the fact that someone else in DeSoto County said to me yesterday, I was part of a book circle. Now I'm in a workspace. It reminds me of all the things in the book circle. My mother is now gotten involved in book circles. And so and she's up in North River. And so now you can see sort of the ripple effects going across boundaries, and generations, which is really great. Long story short, none of this would have existed without the foundation saying, let's try this, let's do this. And then we just did it again with the new civic path. And my understanding is there were 280 or some odd people involved. There were scores of book circles. I've received lots of messages from folks about those. We just did a national book circle where people from those were part of it. These book circles that the Institute did not envision, we did not create, we did not make happen. We're now engaging communities all across the country in similar book circles. So, innovation to me is the middle name of the Patterson Foundation.
Oh, that's very nice. Okay.
And this was one of those great examples where there was innovation here. We did it together, sparked by the foundation, led by the foundation. And now it has created ripple effects, not only here that I was just describing, but it's created ripple effects all across the country.
Yeah, very well, thank you. We shall continue to try and be a hearty partner. What else would you like to cover?
I'd like to talk about how we met.
Oh, all right. Well, now, okay.
If we can do that.
Now as we're halfway through our podcast, just let's talk about how we met. I missed that opportunity.
And you may.
Go for it. Yes, go for it.
I hope you add to this. So
yes.
I was invited to speak at the Grantmakers for Aging. And there's an insight or even there's an insight or a moral to this, which is I spoke, it was fine. And lo and behold, Debra Jacobs walks up to me and says, do you have time to talk? And I said, sure, thinking, okay, we're going to schedule a Zoom call or something. This was maybe even before Zoom. We'll schedule a phone call. And lo and behold, no, you, in your inimitable way, you said, no. We're going to do it now. And I remember sitting, not unlike this, except there wasn't a table between us. And I don't know if you remember this. We were in the back of the room where I gave the talk. And we just sat there for maybe an hour talking really about the ways in which we approach work. It really wasn't even about the work yet. It was about the ways in which we approach work. And even beneath that, I think fundamentally what it was about was our values.
Yep. And did you see you already used words that are in our purpose statement in ways that we work and in community? And no, I totally remember that. And at that time, the Patterson Foundation, with our unfettered charter, we were figuring out what we could do. But we knew that we had to work in community. And again, proven practices. You've got 40 years at this. I wanted to work with the very best to bring into our community. So while you have worked across the nation and across multiple countries, I think that we continue to benefit here, but continue to invest in your work so that it can spread.
Yeah, and it has spread. So if you take the circle, for instance.
Oh, what is that?
Yeah. So I remember, again, this was another conversation. We were on a phone call one morning talking about, you were actually asking me, well, what can we do to spread this work to more places? And I was saying that, we have these different funders that we've been working with, and you started to say, well, why don't we bring them together? So lo and behold, there were about 6, 7 places and funders, and we did bring them together. And that generated a conversation. That led to this thing called the Harwood Circle for Catalytic Funders, which the Patterson Foundation has been incredibly supportive of. And again, it's not the financial support, it's the credibility, it's the leadership, it's your voice, it's the respect that people have for you, which I hear all the time. That started a few years ago and now has grown to, we had to figure out, okay, well, we had a single circle of catalytic funders. There were about, as I mentioned, 6 or 7 of them. As we've spread our work to other communities, new folks have come in, like Bishop Parker Foundation in North River, Manatee County. But here's what we had to wrestle with was there was so much interest in this, we had to conceptualize this differently, which was there are now concentric circles. There are core members of the circle, there are folks who are adjacent to it, and then there are folks even beyond that. And so now we've created this network. I think we're up to about 60 different funders and United Ways and different organizations and funders of all types that are part of this circle and that are helping us innovate to think about how we can spread this work in other ways. And I think that's really critical.
When we find proven practices, it's incumbent upon the Patterson Foundation to share. We should not keep it inside what we have learned. Anything else you want to cover in terms of partnering together?
Well, first of all, I think, it's, people always like to talk about, our partnership is wonderful. Everything has worked out, and it gets kind of sugar-coated and much like focusing on people and communities, we miss part of the story if we don't do things in an honest way. I think we've been partnering now for, I don't know, there are different numbers. Some people say 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. But as in any relationship, there are peaks and valleys. Not everything works. We're not always aligned. And there's sometimes tensions that need to be worked out. And I think when I look back on this relationship, on this partnership, to pick up a word you used a few minutes ago, it is a relationship. And in a relationship, it's rooted in, look, it's not always going to go well. We're not always going to agree. There's going to have to be some tough things. I mean, you've called me a number of times and said, Rich, this isn't working the way we need it to work. I haven't forgotten those conversations.
Well, I would like to, this is part of Wicked. There's blame both ways.
Yeah, well, and
there's times you've had to say to me, Debra, we have proven ways that we know if you want
absolutely.
To innovate. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's the relationship, though. It does go both ways. And I remember there was once where I wrote a memo and said, hey, Debra, here's some things on my mind. So I think as people listen to this, what I hope they can think about and examine in their own work and lives is if you want a relationship that's durable, if you want a relationship that lasts as long as this one has, let's say a dozen years, which is really uncommon in this world, particularly between a nonprofit and a foundation, then buckle up. Get ready to do the hard work. I mean, this is one of the practices we talk about in communities a lot, which is we know how to get together. In America today, we don't know how to work together well enough, to have the hard conversations, to figure out what we really need to do, to figure out what alignment really means, to be willing to triage things when they're not working, even as much as you might love them. And so I think that's been at the core of this relationship. And I think that's what ultimately has made it work.
Well, and that in the closing, TPF has many fives. One of our fives is alignment of leadership, willingness, readiness, capacity, and culture. So when you're going to partner, because everyone likes to say partner, when you want to work together with someone else, when there's alignment of leadership, willingness, readiness, capacity, and culture, we call it LWRCC. If any one of those gets out of alignment, you can figure out why the partnership's being stressed.
Yeah.
And you can come back for a conversation. Oh, there's a readiness issue because maybe there's a medical issue. Maybe, who knows? But looking through that window, it puts a tiny bit of structure science to the how do partnerships really work or not.
Well, the thing I like about those 5 elements is, everyone loves to talk about either partnerships or, when people say collaboration in communities, I'm like, we're not allowed to use that word.
Yeah.
Can you just say we're working together?
No.
Because we don't need $5 words to talk about some basic human things we need to do. The thing I love about those 5 elements is you got to get real. Like, do our cultures really match up?
Yes.
Is there real readiness to get to work together? Is the leadership really exercising leadership in a way that matters and is helping to advance things? You really have to face up to some things in a positive way and realize that, okay, well, if we got 4 out of 5 and we're really committed to this, how do we move the fifth one?
How do we work on that?
Yeah.
Yes.
How do we move it?
Yeah. You and I could talk forever, so we'll just do another podcast sometime. So I am going to thank you for today. And so, listeners, you can hear this on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or another streaming service. And to learn more and to stay tuned, please visit the Patterson Foundation website, www.thepattersonfoundation.org. For more information about the Harwood Institute, please visit theharwoodinstitute.org. Thank you all very much, and let's all keep using our gifts to make the world a better place.